Shalom. I'm Eddie Chumney, Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the current situation with Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's efforts to form a new coalition government. And it is as follows. On March the 17th, Israel had new elections. In the elections, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's political party, Likud, won the most seats in the Israeli government. As a result, Netanyahu has been given the opportunity to form a government coalition. There are 120 members in the Israeli Knesset. A coalition of at least 61 Knesset members is needed to form a government. Based upon the election results, Netanyahu can form a nationalistic right-wing government of 67 members. Alternatively, he could choose to form a government with the primary opposition party, formerly called the Labor Party, now called the Zionist Union. The Zionist Union is a merger between the former Labor Party and Hatnuah, that is, the party established by former Israeli chief negotiator in the peace process, Tzipi Livni. The Zionist Union is a center-left political party. A nationalistic right-wing government of 67 members would consist of the ultra-Orthodox parties Shas and United Torah Judaism, along with the religious Zionist party Jewish Home, headed by Naftali Bennett, the secular Russian-based nationalistic right-wing party Israel Beitenu, headed by Israel Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman, and the new socio-economic party Kulanu, headed by former Likud party member Moshe Collin. The ultra-Orthodox parties Shas and United Torah Judaism are close to an agreement to join the government. Knesset member Yariv Levin, a leader of the negotiating team of the Likud, said that the coalition negotiations with Shas and United Torah Judaism are advancing. Levin said, "We are close to signing agreements with Shas and United Torah Judaism. However, there are still some small disagreements and disputes." Shas representatives said, "The negotiations are very positive. We have progressed in many things," said a senior negotiator. "We still have some disagreements and issues which we are working at in collaboration with United Torah Judaism, especially about the religion ministry. But there is no doubt that we are progressing well." Shas is seeking the Interior and Religious Affairs Ministries for party leader Ari Deri and deputy minister posts in the Finance, Education, and Religious Affairs Ministries for other members of the party. In further meetings with Likud, it is believed that the head of United Torah Judaism, Yaakov Litzman, will be given the position of the Ministry of Health. In addition, United Torah Judaism Knesset member Moshe Gafni would head the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee was also sought after by the Kulanu party of Moshe Collin in order to carry out the economic reforms they promised their constituents. Moshe Gafni has indicated a willingness to meet with Cologne in order to work out an arrangement in which Gafni will head the Finance Committee, but Cologne will be assured of getting what he needs to institute his economic reforms. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that he would keep his promise and appoint Kulanu party leader Moshe Collin to be finance minister, as well as give the party other socio-economic positions within the government. In the March 17th elections, Kulanu ran on the platform to bring down Israeli housing prices and improve the economy. In their meeting, Netanyahu told Kulanu, "Your success is everyone's success." In their meetings, Kulanu also requested the Construction Ministry and the Environmental Protection Ministry, as well as the chairmanship of the Knesset Finance Committee, saying, "No economic reforms will be able to happen if we are not given the authority to accomplish them." In response to demands for the extra positions, Likud officials accused Collin of going overboard. Meanwhile, Kulanu leader Moshe Collin said that he would only join Netanyahu's proposed government coalition if the political party Israel Beitenu or the Zionist Union were a part of the new government coalition. Without one of the two parties, Netanyahu's majority would not rise above 61 seats in the 120-member Knesset. As a result, this would create an unstable government. In any event, Netanyahu seems close to reaching an agreement for the ultra-Orthodox parties in Kulanu to join his government. Recently, Likud negotiators drafted a list of the agreements that they have reached with the ultra-Orthodox parties in the Kulanu party. However, Netanyahu is waiting to reach agreements with the rest of the coalition partners before signing an official agreement with the ultra-Orthodox parties. Meanwhile, in order to strengthen their negotiating position with Likud to join a possible government coalition, Jewish Home leader Naftali Bennett is partnering with Israel Beitenu leader Avigdor Lieberman. According to Israel's Channel 2, Bennett and Lieberman reached an agreement whereby Bennett would drop his demand to be named foreign minister, which is Lieberman's current position in the government, in exchange for Lieberman's assistance in obtaining other key portfolios desired by Jewish Home, primarily the Religious Affairs Ministry, while agreeing to block any attempt by Netanyahu to form a national unity government with the center-left party Zionist Union. Jewish Home is demanding that they receive the Religious Affairs Ministry. Jewish Home leader Naftali Bennett threatened to end negotiations with Likud if Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu grants control of the Religious Affairs Ministry to the Sephardic ultra-Orthodox party Shas. Jewish Home had the Religious Affairs Ministry in the last government. As a result, Bennett said, unilaterally taking the Religious Affairs Ministry away from the religious Zionist movement and handing it to Shas will spell the end of negotiations with Jewish Home. It has been reported that Netanyahu wants to give the Religious Affairs portfolio to Shas chief Ari Deri as compensation for Deri's relinquishing the Interior Ministry to Kulanu party head Moshe Kalin. Sources within Jewish Home said that the only compromise the party would accept was a rotation of the Religious Affairs Ministry or for a member of Likud to be appointed as minister of it. Shas and Jewish Home clashed frequently in the last Knesset over the reforms regarding religion and state. As a result, Jewish Home is trying to prevent Shas from taking control of the issue. Lieberman indicated his preconditions for Israel Beitenu's entry into the Likud-led government. They include liquidation of the terrorist organization Hamas and legislation mandating the death penalty for convicted terrorists. Furthermore, Lieberman will insist on maintaining the laws approved in the last government that ultra-Orthodox yeshiva students serve in the Israeli military. Lieberman is adamant on keeping the quote-unquote sharing the burden law, which calls for the religious to perform some form of national service, as well as reforms to the process of converting to Judaism and to the system of marriage registration, which would allow couples to choose their own rabbi who would perform any wedding ceremony. In contrast, the ultra-Orthodox party Shas and United Torah Judaism want all these laws passed in the last government to be overturned. It is being reported that Netanyahu has promised the ultra-Orthodox that at least some of the religious reforms passed in the last government will be repealed. As a condition for them joining the government, the ultra-Orthodox party Shas and United Torah Judaism demand that the laws concerning religious reforms be revoked. Lieberman wants to continue to be foreign minister and said repairing diplomatic ties with the United States is a top priority on his agenda. Finally, Lieberman opposes the proposal to add more ministers to the government. In the last Israeli government, it was agreed that the total number of cabinet ministers would be restricted to 18. In addition, Lieberman said that he would not sit in a national unity government. Netanyahu has the right to close a deal with Herzog and Livni of the Zionist Union. However, Israel Beitenu wouldn't be part of such a government. This I can say definitely, Lieberman said. In frustration to the demands of Jewish Home and Israel Beitenu, the Likud negotiating team is threatening to establish a national unity government with the main opposition party, Zionist Union. Likud party whip Knesset member Ze'ev Elkin said, "We've been saying all along that if the days go by and the parties of the nationalist camp fail to compromise, the Prime Minister will have no choice but to make a generous offer to the Zionist Union, even though that is not our preferred option." However, Zionist Union Chairman Isaac Herzog maintained that he intends to lead the opposition and not join a unity government. He said, "A government of 67 Knesset members is about to be established, and I said right after the recent elections that we would be going to the opposition, and that's not a default choice. It's a preference," he said. He added that from our place in the opposition, we will take the place of the Likud government in the future, because Netanyahu will lead the government to hit a wall in the final analysis. Furthermore, Zionist Union Knesset member Eaton Kabel affirmed that the Zionist Union will not join a national unity government, saying, "I do not see the Zionist Union being welcome in Netanyahu's government. If there is a statement indicating that Likud would consider a national unity government, it only comes from Likud sources who want to lower the price in the coalition negotiations between the parties of the right," he said. Initially, Netanyahu had 28 days to try to form a government coalition. If needed, he may request a 2-week extension. With little sign of any imminent coalition agreement by the initial April 22nd deadline, Netanyahu asked Israel President Reuven Rivlin for a 2-week extension. The request was granted, and now Netanyahu has until May the 7th to form a coalition government. In being granted the extension, Netanyahu said, "We've moved forward in the process and we're well on our way to forming a new government, but more time is needed to make sure that the government is a stable one and to reach agreement on a number of important issues that will enable us to tackle the challenges facing the state of Israel." After the March 17th elections, it seemed that Netanyahu would be able to easily establish a nationalistic right-wing government. However, after weeks of negotiations with his potential partners, Netanyahu was finding that task more difficult than originally believed. Whether Netanyahu chooses a national unity government with the main opposition party Zionist Union or forms a nationalistic right-wing government, it will have broad implications. If Netanyahu sides with the right-wing allies that he often calls his natural partners, Netanyahu will have a solid parliamentary majority of like-minded parties that could avoid much of the infighting that plagued the outgoing government and provide some welcome internal political stability at home. But such a coalition, averse to peace moves with the Palestinians and in favor of expanded settlement construction in the West Bank, quickly would find itself on a collision course with the international community, at a time when Netanyahu is already feuding with his allies over the direction of the peace process and a nuclear deal with Iran that he strongly opposes. A unity government that includes his leftist rivals would help blunt this looming international isolation. Throughout the election campaign, Netanyahu ruled out the possibility of joining forces with Isaac Herzog and his center-left Zionist Union and vowed to rule from the right. Election results gave his Likud party 30 seats and secured him a potential 67-seat majority with his traditional allies. In negotiations, however, these allies have made demands to head powerful government ministries. Under Israeli election rules, if Netanyahu fails to form a coalition at the end of 42 days, that is, the first 28 days plus a 2-week extension, Israel President Reuven Rivlin can assign someone else the task of doing so. While this is technically possible, it is unlikely that Zionist Union would have an easier time establishing a government coalition. If no one succeeds in forming a coalition, Rivlin would be left with no choice but to order a new national election. Few expect that this will happen. Most believe that a 67-seat right-wing government seems to be the most likely outcome from the 2-week extension. However, within Netanyahu's own Likud political party, his aides acknowledge that Netanyahu is concerned about conflict with his allies in the United States and Western Europe should he indeed form a right-wing government. Increased settlement construction, a prolonged absence of Palestinian peace talks, and nationalistic legislation that critics argue undermines Israel's democratic nature would surely draw a strong rebuke and perhaps even calls for sanctions and boycotts against Israel. With his relations with U.S. President Barack Obama at a low point following clashes over Mideast peace and the Iranian nuclear talks, there is a real fear that Israel's top ally may rescind its automatic protection of Israel at the United Nations and other international bodies. So what government will Netanyahu choose? By May 7th, we will all know. Well, that's going to conclude this week's report, where we shared with you the current status of the progress of Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's efforts to form a new coalition government. Until we do it again, Shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.